Roses are red, violets are blue, and if you criticize the government, DHS will spy on you like a jealous lover, tracking your every move. Because according to the White House's account on X, Daddy's home. Ew. Gross. Let's try this again. Roses are red, the sky is blue. But not for much longer, because last week the Trump administration repealed the EPA's 2009 endangerment finding that carbon pollution is a threat to you. But the Dow's over 50,000. Was. Welcome back to the State of Everything. I'm Maya May, and I'm going to fill you in on what you might have missed last week so you can start this week fully informed. We're going to talk about the partial government shutdown, Marco Rubio's hot racist date with Europe, and how the American dream is on layaway, all while the Trump administration takes us further into debt using your tax dollars to buy shit that we don't need. And I'm going to do this all under 10 minutes. If you see something you want me to go into more depth on, please comment below, and I will drop a short on it later this week. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and watch to the end, where I'll tell you why I am relentlessly optimistic and why you should be too. So let's go. If you were worried that Trump pissed off Europe with tariffs, his love for Putin, and his obsession with Greenland, do not worry. Marco Rubio was at the Munich Security Conference over Valentine's Day weekend and read what can best be described as a love letter to Europe, if that letter were hella xenophobic. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share. Forged. It really was like Bridgerton, but racist. Oh, Lord Rubio, talk great replacement theory to me. DHS has reportedly issued hundreds of subpoenas to social media companies seeking user data, your data, as a part of ongoing investigations. Hey, don't tread on me's. They're definitely treading. And we can't expect Pam Bondi to come to our aid. Trump's second choice, by the way. Well, Pam Bondi last week got into a shouting match during her hearing over her refusal to apologize to survivors of Epstein's sex trafficking ring. Now, a neutral observer would watch and assume that her job must be to protect the president, but it's not. It's to protect us. TSA agents are working without pay again, not because the government wants us to fly less to protect the climate, but because DHS ran out of funding again, because Republicans won't agree to Democrats' insane list of demands, like for ICE agents to stop shooting people and lying about it. Remember when they said they were attacked by two Venezuelan men with a broom and a shovel, so they just had to shoot one of them? Well, turns out video evidence indicates that those officers lied. Shocking. And criminal investigations have now been opened. Did they not learn anything from watching Law and Order? You can't break the law to enforce the law when there's video evidence. But breaking the law is the Trump administration's MO. Courts around the country have ruled more than 4,000 times that immigration detentions were unlawful. A federal judge just ordered the U.S. to retrieve a college student who was wrongfully deported to Honduras against a court order. So restricting DHS funding until they can act right, aka follow the Constitution, should be a no-brainer. The DHS funding bill failed to advance because Schumer and Jeffries finally grew a spine, which Fetterman stepped right over because he doesn't want to hurt more people, even though DHS policies actively hurt people. Democrats introduced a bill that would fund TSA, FEMA, the Secret Service, and the Coast Guard separately from ICE, which makes sense because ICE and FEMA shouldn't be in the same department. Disaster management should not be run by the same people who create disasters. Totally different skill sets. And look, no one wants to hurt TSA agents. Okay, once I was running late for my flight and they made me remove my belt, go through again. But then they let me put the belt back on, which is totally arbitrary, makes no sense, because if you grew up in the 80s like I did, you know that a belt is a weapon. My grandmother could have hijacked a plane with a belt or a switch, but I digress. If DHS wants more money, then ICE agents shouldn't break down doors without judicial warrants and hide behind skull and crossbone masks. Border czar Tom Homan says his agents need them to protect themselves. From what? Accountability? For their actions? If these masks were so important, they'd be department issued and not look like something someone picked up at a truck stop that flies the Confederate flag. But Homan says mass deportation operations will continue because that's what the American people voted for. But a mandate built on lies is not a mandate. One, you can't say the election was a mandate and then also scream voter fraud. Are you saying that millions of undocumented immigrants gave you a mandate to deport them? And two, Trump campaigned in front of a table of groceries. It's like day 389 or so now, and affordability is a hoax. MAGA got conned, and we're all suffering the consequences because groceries sure aren't cheaper. The Republican strategy remains the same: keep the people divided and distracted, hoping we won't notice that last year inflation drained over $2,000 per household, and raises frozen. Driven by AI, companies are doing great, but that is not trickling down. Job growth logged its weakest non-recession year since 2003. 2003, that's when 50 Cent was still in the club. Credit card debt hit a high, but unlike the national debt, we're expected to pay that off at some point. But how if the robot overlords are going to take our jobs? According to the Microsoft AI chief, AI can automate white-collar jobs within 12 to 8 months. But if we don't have jobs, how will we live as indentured servants? Credit card delinquencies just hit their highest level since 2017. And buy now, pay later plans used to be for high ticket items, but last year people started to use it to pay for groceries and Grubhub. And now you can use it to pay for rent. So the economy is basically being propped up by credit. And guess who that helps? Not us. A whopping 59% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. The other 41% must be rich or Trump's bitch. Daddy's home. I have a proposal. How about we shut down the government until the government addresses the affordability mandate? Let's use our tax dollars to invest in public education or health instead of giving them to DHS to finance our own destruction. You see, DHS isn't just operating without oversight. They're recruiting local police to do the same through 287G agreements. And these blur the line between cops who protect communities and officers acting as federal immigration agents. Authorized in 2006, the task force model was canceled in 2012 after Sheriff Joe Arpaio's office racially profiled Latinos. But Trump brought it back because F your rights. January 2025, there were fewer than 200 agencies with these agreements. Now, over 1,400. 150 joined in the first weeks of 2026 alone. Arrests jumped from 3,000 in 2024 to at least 7,000 in 2025. Meanwhile, the DHS civil rights watchdog that monitored this dismantled in 2025. The congressionally mandated report on abuses still hasn't been released. So we're massively expanding a program with a documented history of civil rights violations while eliminating oversight. There are 80,000 people in custody right now. And if the 287G task force quota system continues, that number could skyrocket, especially since earlier this month, the Fifth Circuit allowed mandatory immigration detention without bond to continue. And if Trump gets his way, everyone who doesn't agree with him will get mandatory detention. Trump, who said he'd unite the country, can't even unite the governors. The National Governors Association conference is this week, but the dinner with Trump was canceled after he disinvited Maryland Governor Wes Moore for criticizing his immigration policies. This is so petty, and it's not normal. Could you imagine the leader of any organization just disinviting someone because they don't like them? The Democratic governors canceled in solidarity, and then, surprise, surprise, the chair of the NGA, a Republican, said, "We roll together or not at all," and canceled the dinner. All governors matter. And in other news you might have missed, DHS ended temporary protected status for Yemen, forcing them to travel to a country that is on the do not travel list. There are now 2 U.S. aircraft carriers in the Middle East, and Trump said new leadership in Iran would be the best thing that could happen. Not sure he sees the irony, but I know you do. Speaking of tyrannical governments that arrest journalists, over the weekend, journalist Don Lemon pled not guilty to conspiracy to restrict civil rights and to violating the FACE Act. So, why am I aggressively optimistic? Because the DHS fight proves the saying that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And this comes after a year of people putting pressure on protests, economic boycotts, and even Rogan wondering, I thought they were just going after the criminals. Rich guys like Scott Galloway and Ramit Sethi are putting their money where their values are and refusing to shop at companies that are tied to ICE contracts. Soccer moms are blowing up signal chats with the same energy they organize PTA meetings. Hey, Pam, when you see ICE, blow the whistle. NBA athletes are speaking up because it's trendy to be empathetic again. And a lone woman set fire to a warehouse. Two wrongs don't make a right means the bad guy always wins. So, as Chris Rock once said, I'm not saying I agree, but I understand. Accountability doesn't start in Washington. It starts with us taking action. Maybe skip the lighter fluid. Thank you for watching. America, you got this.